Okay, so survey art. To actually make your value scale assignment, you're going to need a few different things. You need some paper. So there's just regular old printer paper that has been put into your supplies. You should have three different kinds of pencils. I talked about those in the slideshow. So you've got your 2H, ooh, blurry, which is your hardest pencil, so the lightest. You've got your 2B, which is your mid pencil, so your middies. And then you have your 4B through your 6B, which ends up being your darkest. So we'll use all of these to make our value scales because it's going to make our life a little bit easier. I'm going to start from lightest to darkest. So I'm going to show you the best way to lay these out and then those four different kinds of value scales. Something else you'll need is one of the blending stumps. You should have two or three different kinds. I can't remember how many packed in your thing, whichever one is fine. You should also have some sandpaper in there. That's actually for these. Something to know about these little pieces of tubular paper. To get all the graphite off, we actually use sandpaper to sand it down. I don't happen to have any in my craft room here right now. But do not peel them. If you peel them, they just unroll and they become this big blob of nothing goodness. You also need a ruler, because that's going to make your life easier. And then you should have gotten a little package of a gray eraser. So this is called a kneaded eraser, and it's because you can stretch it out. You can play with it. You can mold it into different little shapes, but this will come in handy for a part of this as well. So you can set up your sketchbook or your sketch pages, I should say, however you want. So you could do maybe 2 scales per page plus 2 forms. You could do 1 scale and 1 form per page. I prefer not to draw really tiny, so I wouldn't actually set it up with like one little tiny shape and the scale. Up to you how you want to actually set it up. Your rulers and your kits all look different, but they serve the same purpose. So I think the easiest way to make a 7-piece scale is just by tracing the outside of your ruler. I should have stopped at 7 inches. That would have been cool. So now every inch I'm just going to mark. Or actually, let's do it the even easier way. Well, you could do it like my ruler happens to be 1 inch wide. So I could pretty much just go around this way. Now I have like really straight lines and really straight boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got a weird line in my middle one here, but that's going to be my darkest one, so it doesn't matter. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes. I'm going to go from lightest to darkest, so we're going to go in that direction. And remember, we're doing a gradient, which means it should be just a real gradual change from light to dark. So I am going to go with my hardest pencil. So 2H, HB, or F should be your lightest one. And I'm going to start with a blended scale first. So for a blended scale, I don't want to use the tip of my pencil facing down because you make the hardest mark and it's harder to blend it away. So I'm going to use the side of my pencil like this actually. I'm just like really lightly going to fill this first circle in. On the webcam, you can actually like barely see it. It's so light. And then I'm going to take my tortillon here. Oh, baby, this one has so much stuff on it. Psychorama. Let me get some of this stuff off. I wish I had some sandpaper in my house right now, but I don't. I'm just going to really lightly blend. You can kind of blend in a circular motion. So now I've got my lightest color down. I'm going to stick with this one. I'm just going to go a little bit harder. Go a little bit harder the next one, and I'll blend these down in a minute. And I'm going to go to my mid-grade. I don't have to push that hard for that mid-grade to be darker than this. You see how we're just transitionally getting even a little bit darker. And I'm going to go like a little bit harder with this one. I'm going to take my 6B, which is my darkest one. Again, don't have to push very hard because I'm changing actual pencils that I'm using. You should also have a sharpener in your kit. Let me go grab a sharpener. I'll make it stuff over here. easier to do the side thing. Yeah, it's just a dull sharpen in real life. Don't get so liney. And then for my last one, I'm going to push really hard to get that darkness. Now, with my Tortillion, I'm going to blend this one. So blend it so I don't see all that lininess kind of work in a circular motion. I could blend using my finger, but then you get graphite all over your fingers. You could blend using a tissue or a paper towel. So that kind of like blends your lines away. Not perfectly. Go in the opposite direction, kind of work in circles, circles. This one was a little scratchy looking because my pencil wasn't super sharp when I did it. Now, because I'm going from light to dark, I could just use my Tortillion all the way through. I would not want to go from dark to light with my Tortillion because this gets, let's see, all that graphite on it. So if I went to go blend my lightest one, it would actually add color to it. Now, say I accidentally add color somewhere I don't want it to be. So where my kneaded eraser comes in handy, I'm going to knead it up. I'm going to push it down on that value. See that kind of like started erasing away? This way I'm not completely erasing something away, but I'm just slightly taking value. So say this middle one was a little too dark for me, but I want to kind of keep most of the value so I don't have to start over again. I can take this guy. See how that little area just where I push like the kind of cloud image? That's just me pulling up graphite. And you can see it gets stuck on here. So then you just knead that away. And I could do a little bit more. Although I was satisfied with how that looked. Now I'm just going to show you the other three techniques and just a little bit of like a gradient into those as well. So if I'm, this one I should call blended. Then I've got say I got my other square. Hatching is just straight lines. So the lighter the lines and the farther apart they are, the less value. I could make them a little bit darker and a little bit closer together. A little bit darker, a little bit closer together. A lot darker, a lot closer together. So mostly it's about how dense they are or how close they are together. You can also push lighter or darker for this. Same thing if I'm cross hatching. So if I'm doing a light one, I just won't have that many in my hatching. But as I get to my darkest one, I'm going to hatch in like a gazillion directions. And those hatching marks are going to be really close together. So I just want to slowly transition those. So maybe in the middle here, I'm pushing a little bit darker, but those hatching marks are also getting a little bit closer together. So I'm going from like a light to a medium to a dark. Stippling really works best with a marker, not a pencil, because it's hard to dot. So if I'm doing stippling and I'm doing this marker over here, like I said, if I'm doing stippling, a light value may only have a couple. This one is going to be a little bit more dense. And then where it's really dark, I'm going to really just like stipple that entire area because that creates more value the more dense or closer together those dots become. So I would use a marker for that one or a pen or something. It becomes a little bit easier to create that gradient value between them. So hatching is just one direction. Cross hatching is many directions. And stippling, spittling, I can spell. Stippling is dots. So that's how those go. Now with each one of these styles, I want to create a form. So not on the back side, but like look what happens with stippling on the back side. So make sure there's nothing under your paper when you do that one. But for forms, so say I got my circle here. I'm gonna try and draw it light. Wow, perfect circle. Looks great. If I'm doing blended and my light direction is coming from here, what I can do is I'm going to use my specific pencil to create that lightest area. And you kind of want to work in a circular motion. These are going to be my light value areas. Then I'm going to take that medium one and work in that circular motion to kind of make sure I'm staying with that circle. Take my darkest pencil, work that dark one in. I'm also going to remember that there's like reflected light at the bottom. And on the document that's on Google Classroom, you have examples of this. Then I'm going to make that shadow that it casts. That shadow is the darkest closest to it, and then it lightens up as you go farther away. Now that doesn't look very good yet. That's where my tortillon is going to come in handy. I'm going to blend this darkest part first. Make sure I have that reflected light area still. I'm going to work around. Use the other side of my tortillon that's not dirty to do my mediums. Really try to blend those in. That's why you want to use the side of your pencil, not the tip of your pencil. Work in a circular motion. I'm also going to do that with my shadow. And I can always go back in and add more darks in certain areas or lights. And then I could take my little kneaded eraser and create that reflected light area. Or again, say like I got too dark somewhere, I could pull some of that out. Hatching is a little bit trickier because you want to only go in one direction, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly hatch at an angle instead of up and down. So again, I'm only working in one direction, and I am not going to blend this in at all. So then I'm going to get denser in those areas that are darker. And I can go with my darker pencil for that as well. So again, I'm only cross-hatching in one direction, but those hatches can be short. They can be all the way long. I'm going to make some of them short to bend around this. Don't forget my shadow down here. So these ones are going to be dense as well, and then lighter as they work their way out. And I would be a little bit neater about this, but I just don't want to waste your time too much by showing you too much. Let that curve around that front side a little bit. You don't want to forget where that highlight comes in. And again, if I get too dark in some areas, but I want to keep my lines, if I just push down with this, I can reduce some of that value out of there. So now I'm getting the hatching. And then I would continue these for cross-hatching and for stippling. You want to try all four shapes though. So don't just stick with the sphere. Try the sphere, the cone, the prism or rectangle, and then the cube as well. So that is my value video. If you have any questions, let me know. Everything should be posted on Google Classroom, so there should be a step-by-step instruction for the value scales, the PowerPoint, and then the 2 videos, the one for the PowerPoint and then the one for actually doing the value. Bye.